I'd like to officially welcome everyone to Bringing It All Together, Smart Notes and the Connected Knowledge Base on the Go. My name is Shelley Hayduck, and I'm co-hosting today's event with Matt Caton, our Director of Customer Solutions.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us.
And we have Yaya on our Q&A. As I mentioned to those of you who have already joined early, we have an active Q&A, so feel free to type in your questions. We're going to reserve a good 15 minutes to review Q&A and to hopefully demo any other features or questions that you might have. Today's session is all about creating that space for you to really integrate information. Obviously, there's a lot of talk these days about AI and everything you can do with AI, and we do have AI and smart notes that we're going to show you. But you still need that place. People still, when I do client engagements, you still see multiple tabs. You're still searching through files and folders. There's company drives, there's portals. So even with the advent of all this new technology that we have and that we're going to feature, it's still very important to have that place where you can simply bring it all together, integrate and aggregate all your information. So today's session is going to be exactly about that, really helping you take all that information that you might be launching different applications, file drives, websites, and put it all in one place so that you can make connections and really learn and grow with that. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on my thinking space brain and just give you a little bit of an overview. So pieces of information in the brain are what we call thoughts. And a thought can represent any type of digital information. So I've just clicked on my active project thought, and this particular thought has a note attached to it. So you might just have a thought as you think about a thought with what you're thinking about. So my active projects, I've got a checklist, I've got planned activities. All this goes into this particular thought. But one of the nice things about a thought is you can attach all types of information. So you can have a web page, a PowerPoint presentation, a Word document, a folder, and all this information of different types, different sources, comes together in a way that reflects your thinking rather than your browser history or your internet favorites or some file drive. So, for instance, this particular thought, my website design plans, has a variety of content. But one of the nice things about the brain, you might ask, why don't I just have a folder that has my web design plans? Well, the reason is because I need to think of my information in many different dimensions. So my website design plan isn't just an active project, it's actually a marketing project. So I actually could have got to this particular piece of information from marketing. My website design plan is also a key company investment. So when I'm thinking about website planning, I might also be thinking about other key investments like, okay, we're opening this new office in Europe. I've got some staff expansion. This might affect this particular plan. So one of the advantages of the brain is I can have that one piece of information effectively located under multiple categories. I can see the complexity of the information in a very simple, accessible way so that I can have a more in-depth thought of how I approach these types of information. So adding a piece of information is very easy. We'll just start with the basics here. I can click on a thought and I can add an icon. If I want to right click on this particular thought, I can actually go ahead and add any number of attachments. I can link to files, I can link to folders, or I can create file templates where I have maybe an Excel worksheet budget template I have, or a publisher document. In this case, I'm just going to go ahead. We're talking about bringing it all together. I'm just going to create a new file, a Word document on my web design. So I can go ahead and type away. I can save that, and that's going to go ahead and save back into the brain. I'm just going to close this. And you can see now I've got this document attached to this particular thought. This document is also searchable, and I'm just going to move my webcam so you can see what's happening in our content area. So in addition to this note here, you'll see that I actually have the file as well attached. And you'll see that I can launch that. I can have any number of documents attached here. This is fantastic for version control. And it's very easy to add existing information into your brain as well. It's all done with simple drag and drop. So let me go ahead and we are doing a brand audit that's going to affect this website. So I'm going to simply drag and drop this document under my website plan. And what this has done is it's gone ahead and it's created a copy of this document in my brain. Now, there are some different settings that you can set up if you want to actually move the file into the brain. That's in your preferences, or have a link to it. In this case, I've decided to keep it as a copy, just so you can see. And I do store this file internally into the brain. From there, I can go ahead and work on the document. I can make a note if I'm sharing this with the team. This is a very key read for everyone. And what's also nice is I can go ahead and integrate and continue to grow my knowledge on that particular topic. So I'm actually going to go up to options and go ahead and search web. And I'm going to do a search on brand auditing. I'm going to just change this search here. Brand auditing. Here we go. And this is an interesting web page from Brand24. Go ahead and set this. How to conduct a brand audit. So I actually like this piece of information. So what I'm going to do now, I'm just on my computer, is I'm going to drag this link into my brain. So here we go. I'm going to drag and drop this. And what that does is it actually creates a link in my brain. And I can actually look at this particular piece of website in the brain, and I can also rename it. So if I want to say, call this something that is more relevant to my project, key steps for branding, I can go ahead and do that, and I can continue to make notes. And this is a live web page. Now we're going to get into how to clip web pages, but for now, I just want to show you how to build a knowledge base from multiple sources very quickly. Now, this particular thought is also related to some other stuff I have in my brain. I have a video on what is branding. So I'm actually going to make a connection to that particular piece of information as well. And in this case, I might put it under my branding section in marketing. So you can see how this particular piece of information that I added, it's part of my web design, but it's also part of our general branding strategy. And one of the nice things about the brain is you can see I've got Word documents. I can actually go ahead and watch a video here on what branding is. So I'm really moving quickly between different types of content, and that's in a consistent interface. And I guess that's one of the key value propositions of bringing it all together in the brain, is that when I have my YouTube video, I can move over to my analytics, which might be a relative path to, a reporting tool that I'm using on my website, my content ideas that can either be a Word document or what have it, and my website plan. So I don't have to switch between different applications. I don't have to do a million different searches on my computer. I've got it all here. Now I'm going to actually go ahead and go into another section in this particular brain on team growth and expansion. So once again, you can see I love the notes area. So I've got some really cool notes on my plan to grow my team and expand. And I'm actually going to build a more complete recruitment plan. So this is another area that I'm working on. So a lot of recruiters will use a number of job sites. So we've got candidates on Monster, Job, Indeed, all kinds of sites. So what is actually fantastic as well is to take all those third-party websites, and I'm just going to add the home page here, but you'll probably want to add your specific company page, links to a folder maybe on the site with a different candidate, and put all these links together that you're using. So I'm just going to go ahead and launch Indeed here. I'm not going to log in, but I could log in. I could go to a particular candidate search and use that URL and drag and drop it under my recruiting plan. So you can see that I've got my links, my thoughts and ideas all integrated in one place. And we can also drag and drop folders as well. So let me just hop back to my marketing section. And I've got a bunch of marketing projects in this folder. Now I can drag and drop those one at a time, or I can import that folder. And in this case, I'm simply going to drag and drop this folder into my brain. And now what you can see is I've got all my documents in that particular folder. Now, if I want to have separate thoughts for these doc or files, I can do that too. I can drag them and create them as separate, or I can keep them in a folder. So it really depends how granular you want to get. And maybe that marketing 2025 budget, that's going to impact my website. So here, not only am I bringing things together, but I'm starting to make connections that are relevant so that myself and my team can discover. So now when I'm talking about my web design plans, I haven't forgot, or I don't have to search my folders out here for this marketing plan. It's all integrated and all connected. And I think with that, that's a basic example of how easy and quickly it is to integrate a variety of sources. I'm going to now pass it over to Matt. So we're going to go a little bit further talking about web clipping, BrainBox, and a few other things. And of course, if anyone does have any more questions on how to drag and drop files or how to link to web pages, we're happy to cover that further in Q&A.
Absolutely. And we did get a lot of questions about, a couple of questions that I didn't expect about importing into the brain. A few
Okay.
features that, I wasn't quite ready to demo today, but maybe if I have some time at the end, I'll get into file and importing. We've got many different importing options. A few people asked about importing Mind Manager. No reason to recreate the wheel and export it into some, crazy structure and then import it into the brain. Import an MMAP file directly into a brain. You can import it into a sample brain, see how it looks, and then continue on building from there. Another person had questions about importing file and folder directories. So that's an option for you as well. So many different ways to get data into the brain. Thank you, Shelley. And yeah, I'm going to start off really quickly with talking about just some quick capture methodologies that work with the brain. We've got many different examples to share with you, so maybe one of these will, spark ignite a fire or spark an idea of how you can get your desired data into the brain. And that's something that we constantly like to stress is that, pieces of information in the brain, your thoughts, can be associated with many different types of data, and no two people collect the same type of data in exactly the same way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to jump into my research focus areas, and I'm doing a lot of research right now on high cholesterol. We've got, and this is a sample brain that I'm sharing with you today. But just a variety of different ways and to get data into the brain. And I thought this might be interesting to see just how I'm bringing in supporting data for my media blitz of all of our products. We've got 4 different products. We're doing a huge media blitz in 2026. And as you can see, and as you saw on Shelley's screen, I've got PDF files that I've got quick and easy access to, so I can load those right up. I've got videos that can load right over here in the content area. I've got files, documents, and even my own personal notes and web pages that I'm linking to and connecting to. So everything going on with this project, with your project, whatever the subject matter may be, is always going to be at your fingertips. So let's go ahead and get started. First and foremost, I want to share some different types of graphics with my team. We want graphics that support and show the positive of our products, not to scare our clients away. Like, ooh, there's this particular disease is dangerous and it's bad, and we don't want to scare people. We want to say, hey, come try our products. They're really fantastic. Options for you when battling, in this scenario, high cholesterol. So I have a couple of graphics that I've already identified here. And I can just click and open them up and say, yeah, this is good. It shows you a range, phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. So there's nothing too scary about this particular graphic. This is the type of thing that we're looking for our media blitz, for our ad campaign. So right here on the graphics thought, I've got the brain open. I found an image that I really want to capture and preserve and share with my team to discuss further. So I'm going to click on attach and select insert and select to capture and insert an image. So the brain minimizes, and I can quickly, as you can see, I get these little crosshairs, and I can click and drag, and I'll just label this. I'll add my own text. Here is a sample of a good image. So I just know for later, these are the types of images or graphics that informative that we're looking for our base that we're advertising to. And I'll also do, here is a sample of a bad image, scary and not informative. So just quickly coming to mind, while my design team, and let's spell things correctly there, while my design team gets started, just some really quick, simple guidelines. I find another image that, this isn't informative. It's just showing a thermometer exploding with blood. Ugh, that's disgusting. That's not what we're looking for our base clientele. So again, back in the brain, I'm adding my note, I insert and capture an image. Now you can save this image and drag and drop it into the brain. There's a few extra steps there. You can right click, copy and paste into the notes, which is a very simple process. But sometimes you just want to get a portion of a graphic without all of the, maybe I wanted this cropped right here at the section that I specifically don't like. I can, and I don't want the entire image, or it's part of a much larger graphic. So again, you can just simply say insert, capture, and grab just a little portion of what you don't like about that image. Great, quick, simple, got that data into the brain, and I can move on to my next topic. Now, sometimes you do want to bring in the entire web page. You find a resource that is going to be so helpful. You want to preserve it. Obviously, you can bring that into the brain through drag and drop, as you saw on Shelly's machine. But sometimes drag and drop isn't an option. So that's what we're going to talk about. Now, typically, Shelly and I had this discussion just yesterday in preparing for today's webinar. When we're working on our desktop computers, we have the brain open. So drag and drop is always an option for us. But maybe we don't have the right brain open, or the right area, or we don't know if we have a home for this data. There's a lot of helpful data on this website. It's going to be incredibly useful. I'm going to be referring back to it over time as I work on this project. I don't have my brain open right now, or what have you. We can send it into BrainBox. So let's talk a little bit about BrainBox. So yes, again, I could click and drag and bring this right into the brain. There it is. And it loads up in the content area. Fantastic. But if I don't happen to have the brain open, and I've got another really great website that's all about cholesterol, I'm going to click on the BrainBox icon. Now, BrainBox. BrainBox on your desktop, whatever, regardless of your browser, go to www.thebrain.com/BrainBox and you can see how to install the extension. I like Chrome, so you can go to the Chrome, gosh, what's it called? The Windows App Store or something like that, and it's a free extension for your Chrome browser. So we've got instructions for Safari, Firefox, and so forth. So now that I have my Chrome extension here for BrainBox, when I see a web page that I really like, this one's going to be helpful, I can just click and send this to BrainBox. Now, there's a few different options. Notice that I came to a landing page. You can set it up where you hide. If I click to hide, then when you click on that button, the web page, the URL goes directly to BrainBox. I have this button. I have basically set it up so that I can review what do I want to do with the web page that I just activated. And I can send it directly to BrainBox, or I can create it as a child thought of another thought elsewhere in my brain. Now you can see recently I searched for nanotechnology. That's not where I want this. I want this under my, let's say I want to send it directly to my 2026 media blitz. So I'll click and I'll search for 2026. There it is, right at the top, 2026 Media Blitz. That is where I want to send this content to. And look at these great options. I can rename here really quickly. I can go to, I've got my graphic there that looks fantastic. Maybe I don't need anything past that. I just want sort of a high level overview. Why are numbers important? Here's my little scale and all of this from the web page. All those, there's tables and a lot of additional information. It's too much. I can now remove that. And I can even add my own content. So not only am I clipping a little portion of this web page, I'm right on the fly, sending it to the right location in the brain, in my brain. And I also want to say this is important for our search on human longevity. And I'll go ahead and now if I click on create, it's going to open up this brain on in the web client. So I can review, did it go to the right place? I know it's going to do that. I'm going to click on the lightning bolt and send that data on its way. Now, when I return to the brain, and I go back to 2026 Media Blitz, and I still need to sync. The brain syncs in the background every 3 to 5 minutes. I don't want to wait that long and waste your time. So I went ahead and clicked on sync, and look what we have. I have, because I specified when I clicked on the BrainBox extension, in my browser, I want to link to the full web page, but also I've got my notes right at the top and the content that I desired from that web page down below. This web page could vanish and go away. It could be modified. Maybe you're linking to a news article. The news is changing daily, and that page might not be there tomorrow. Maybe you're linking to Wikipedia. Guess what? Wikipedia can be edited by the general public. So you find something you like and you want to preserve. This is how it looked today. This content, it's important to me. Rather than just link to that website, which might go bye-bye in the future, you can actually web clip it. Grab the content you want. It's preserved here in my note, and I can continue to edit in the future. One additional twist to what I just shared with you that I want to talk about is I'm going to find another web page. And when I find something I like, let's say I want to grab just this paragraph and the graphic. So rather than sending the whole page to BrainBox, you can also select the content that you're interested in. A table, a graphic, a chart, whatever the case may be. Once again, I click on the BrainBox icon. I click on options in case I want to make some modifications. There's my graphic, and it put it in twice, I think, because I selected the um, the link to the graphic. So it added the graphic. So I'm just going to select that and delete. Once again, I can make my own changes, my modifications, high cholesterol, quick overview. Again, I'm sending it directly to the location I want. And why I think this is so important is because sometimes you are working on a project and you know all the research that you're doing right now on the web needs to go to a certain place. So you can have BrainBox reflecting a process for you rather than just sending it all into BrainBox to organize and categorize later, which I'll do in just a bit. But for now, I know right where I want to send this to. I can make it appended to this existing thought, a child of the thought with my notes. And all of this can be modified on the fly. I can include it or not include it. I don't need the link to the Mayo Clinic where I captured this. I've got the information I need. I will create. That time I clicked on create, so you can see it takes me directly to the web, so you can review that content. So the web client is updated and back on the desktop when sync goes through, again, every 3 to 5 minutes, that content will be in sync. The web client and my desktop brain will have the exact same data consistently. So another feature that I want to share with you, I'm going to go back into this understanding levels and numbers thought because something happened when I sent this data into the brain that I want to highlight. The brain in the background is consistently helping you to find relationships with existing data. And we do this through backlinks and unlinked mentions. Now, there are a few apps out there that contain backlinks and unlinked mentions, but typically you have to set them up manually. The brain is doing this work for you automatically. So I even typed up this little note right at the top. This is important for our research on human longevity. Notice that human longevity is underlined. That's not a misspelling. A misspelling in the my current uh, color code is red, as you can see if I type in something that's misspelled. So human longevity underlined in blue, that is an unlinked mention. That's telling me, hey, I just created something in my brain and I already have existing data on this topic. So suddenly, by putting more and more information into the brain application is making me smarter without even having to try. I'm reminded, oh, I've got all this content, and this is really what I'm focused on. Getting healthy through better lowering my cholesterol is going to have benefits in other categories, such as human longevity. So I'll activate this thought. Takes me to my human longevity thought, where I've got a lot of information already available, resources and data that I'm collecting. And once again, if I ever see something in that is underlined in blue, I know that that content exists elsewhere in this brain. Cellular syn senescence. I think I pronounced that correctly. I'm going to go to this thought. So we'll activate that thought. And there's a huge note on what this exactly is and so forth. So I'm well on my way to better understanding all of the data that I'm collecting and how it relates to other pieces of information elsewhere in my brain. So let's continue to build on this. So now we're talking about our product, how we're going to be marketing our product, how it's going to help in other aspects of our life and pay off in terms of longevity. I'm about ready to step into a meeting and people want to talk about, hey, for the marketing, how can we identify that this is an added benefit? You know, you're not only getting healthy now, you're going to stay healthy in the future if you take our products and so forth. Great. So I'm going to talk a little bit about cellular senescence. And boy, there's a lot of information on what this exactly is. And if I walk into my board meeting and just start reading word for word about, okay, we've got a product that is really, really going to be beneficial towards cellular senescence. All the marketing team, even myself, I could barely pronounce the word. You know, unless you're a scientist, you probably aren't going to know what I'm talking about. So I have an existing note here and now I'm going to jump into a little bit of our AI functionality. You've maybe seen, if you've seen us do some presentations in the past on the brain and all the great AI capabilities that the brain has to build thought structures, create notes, and so forth. It can also modify existing content. Like I said, I'm walking into this board meeting with this huge, verbose description of this cellular senescence, and I need to be able to describe it in simple terms. So, this very long note, I'm going to tell AI to summarize it. And right at the bottom, it's going to take this incredibly long note and sort of just give me the highlight overview. This is still a lot of data. I'll go ahead and accept these changes, but you know what? Again, my marketing team isn't going to want to sit through that description. It took about an 8-page note and made it maybe 1 or 2 pages too long. I'm going to select just this content of the overview and I'll modify it even further. I'm going to rewrite this as a single paragraph with no more than 100 words. So sort of the elevator pitch. I probably could have typed in, give me the elevator pitch. This is perfect. I can sit up and in front of a group of board members and probably read through this paragraph to just give them a brief overview on how our product is going to focus on this particular topic to give you better health and a longer life. Great. And I can continue modifying from there if I'm interested, but I'll go ahead and accept those changes. And now I've got my nice high level overview. Another feature that I want to share with you in regards to the AI, let's jump back into here. Let me go into my, oh, I didn't have the brain full screen. There we go. I want to get back into my media blitz. And I've created a thought, what are some good marketing tactics to promote a low cholesterol medication? Now, typically, again, I'd go out, start researching this on the web. I can ask this question to AI and create a note that is going to help me stay focused on this particular topic and maybe even enlighten me a bit with some additional information. So what I'm trying to demonstrate here is that, the AI integration in the brain isn't just answering questions. I could type in what is high cholesterol, and it's going to give me a very scientific overview of what that is. A lot of AI can do that. Here, I'm taking a more creative approach. Tell me some marketing tactics that I need to think about when selling my medications. Okay, great. Let's see what AI says. I'll generate a note. Word count 700. That sounds good. I'll go ahead and generate that. And understanding your target audience, educating through content marketing, influencers. I hadn't even thought about going out and getting some influencers to help me in social media and so forth. Highlight differences between other medications. Oh, there's a lot of fantastic help here. So it's not just answering a straight factual question. It's just giving me ideas, creative ideas to move forward with my project. And as we can see now, I've got sort of an outline that where I can continue my research. I've got my graphics that I'm focused on. I've got all of my documentation and web pages that I've brought in. So all these different aspects of the project that I'm working on are slowly coming together to help me focus on what the next steps will be for this media blitz. And that brings me to another point, which Shelley actually mentioned earlier, is all these disparate information sources. Everyone has access to the web. Everyone has their own notes that they like to take. But so many of us out there use different applications to maintain and manage our data. Even if you don't use Google Drive, someone on your team, or maybe a customer, a client, or a contractor does, and they send you a link. They say, hey, you can download this file from my Google Drive. Here it is. So now suddenly, even though you don't store your data in Google Drive, you're unwillingly using Google Drive. And there's so many out there, Dropbox, OneDrive, and so forth. So many disparate information sources. Again, those can all come together in the brain. So I'm going to share, I've picked just two of those different platforms to share with you. And the first is Google Drive. Let me see if, there it is. There's my Google Drive. So I use the brain. I put all data in the brain. So this is a sample Google Drive. um, and not something that I use day to day. But here is a file that was shared with me. So if I open it up, is it going to open? There we go. So this particular file was shared with me. I've got read only or view only access to this file, and it's sitting in my Google Drive. Everything in Google Drive has a URL. Everything in Dropbox, so many of these online applications, Office 365, everything has a shareable URL. Now it's either shareable, like it's unlocked and the world has access to it, or maybe it's in your private Google Drive and it's password protected. The brain doesn't care about that. You can share a link or bring a link into the brain that is password protected or not. And when it launches from the brain, if you've entered your password into the brain's built-in browser, it's going to open that document. If you share your brain with someone that doesn't have a password to that file, it'll launch the login screen and they'll be prompted to log in. And if they don't have a password to your account or to that file, they don't go any further. So it's sort of like adding a little bit of additional protection to files and data that you're bringing into your brain in some capacity as well. There's different ways for the brain to do that, but that's one feature to be aware of. So I'm going to right click on this file. And as you can see, there's share, and I'm copying the share link. This is a very recreational file, but regardless, for whatever sports activities, that's going to help us lower our our glycemic index or what have you, that whatever it is I happen to be researching, high cholesterol. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to paste that web link. Now that doesn't look too cute, so I'm going to activate this thought and rename it, and I'll call it activity sample. So starting a tennis group and having a tournament and so forth, that, and being active with a larger group, it's going to help as well. So I want to use that as a reference in my media blitz. And what's happening? It's opening, it's launching this web page. It's an online Excel spreadsheet, and it's launching right here in the Brain's built-in browser. Now, I can't edit right now because, as I showed you, I've got view only. But if I request access to edit this particular document, I can start adding my own information right here from the Brain's built-in browser. I can modify those online documents. So that's one example of bringing in disparate information sources. Another, and this came up just earlier this week in support. A few folks were talking about, hey, how do I bring OneNote? I've got a lot of data in OneNote. Now I've discovered the brain. I want to start, bringing some of my data over. As I mentioned earlier, if you can export your data to a file and folder directory, you can then import that into the brain. So one massive folder with subfolders and so forth. Folders become thoughts when you're importing, and file attachments become attachments to those thoughts. And if you have .md files, Markdown files in your file and folder directory, those .md files can be edited in the brain's content area. So here, let's say I've got some additional information and research that someone sent me. Oh, I want to include this in the marketing campaign. Okay, great. What I'm going to do is, and notice these are all separate components. So here's a little chapter or a paragraph on the causes, a couple of graphics, a little bit more scientific and so forth. Great information. I just want this little bit to come into the brain. I want to make sure I copy that. So I am going to copy link to paragraph. So in OneNote, you copy the link to the paragraph. And what do I do back in the brain? Let's say I just want to create a new thought called additional data from Tim, who sent me this document. And here in the notes, I am going to Control V, paste. Now, when you copy a shareable link in OneNote and paste that into the notes area of your brain, so here is Tim's info. So this is just pasted into the note, and it gave me two links, which is interesting. If I click on the first one, it's going to launch the document in the desktop app of of OneNote. The other link that it pasted in, and OneNote is unique in this process, it takes me out to the web and logs me in and takes me directly to that particular paragraph on that particular note. So each item, each paragraph, each graphic, each folder, each note, they all have their own URL associated with them. And you just right click, capture the URL and paste that into the notes of the brain, and OneNote links are going to work just fine. So in other words, that's not an import. I just have a link out to that file. If I wanted to import that data, I would need to first extract it from OneNote into a file and folder directory and then import. So OneNote and Google Drive, a couple of different samples to share with you. I've talked a little bit about the AI today, but also everything I've done today so far has been taken place here on my desktop machine. Guess what? You can have access to the brain from the desktop app, either Windows or Mac, from the web client, or from mobile devices. When we talk about taking information and capturing information on the go, we stand behind that. We really mean it. And so many people are finding data while they're on their computer or surfing the web or from their iPhone or from their kids. I even from time to time I'll have my kids Chromebook handy. So there's no Brain app installed on a Chromebook. It's all just a web interface. So what do I do when I want some information from my brain? I launch the web URL, app.thebrain.com, log in, and I've got access to my brain. Find something I like, I'm going to send it through BrainBox into my brain to capture and organize at a later date. And so the example I'm going to share with you is right here on my phone. Now, what you're seeing on the screen right now is actually my real phone. So there, let me log in. And so this is my real phone. As I navigate around, you see that reflected here on the desktop, on the mirror. And when I click on the brain, notice that the brain is the only app that stands alone. I point that out every now and then. It's the only app that I don't drop into. Oh, I had a sync error. There, it worked fine. It's the only app that I don't drop into another subfolder shared with other things. I always need and have access to my brain right here so that I've got bread recipes, as you can see, and so forth. Um, on the iOS app. So let's talk about quick capture information. Now, I noticed that Rose is on the call today, and Rose was on the Brain 101 last week and asked the question specifically, quick capture. Yeah, I want to quickly capture a photograph I take and send it into the brain. So when you install the Brain on your iOS app, and we also have an Android app as well, the share button is going to give you the option to send to BrainBox. So I will go into, let's go into my photographs. So here are all of my photos that I've taken of family and friends and hikes and things. And when I find something that I want to send into the brain, I tap on a share icon, and right there, the share icon is the square with the arrow. I have the option of sharing it with the brains. And now when I return then and I open up BrainBox, there's one image, and the other image, again, it just needs to sync in the background is on its way. And so I can tap, I can preview this image, I can attach it to that particular thought, or what I'll do is I'm going to return to my desktop here in just a moment and attach it to the desired location of the right brain. So it basically turns, and here, let's do this with a web page. Hopefully the web page is going to behave a little bit better. So this is just a goofy web page that I found that I really like, but the technology that's taking place on this, on this particular, and sorry, has sound with it. Hopefully that's not coming through. But regardless, if I find something I like, and here you can see it on the screen. There's that share icon. That's exactly what I was seeing when I was on the when I was on the image. select BrainBox, and I'm sending this hey hey web page to BrainBox. And if I go back and take a look, oh, thank goodness the music is gone. And oh, this is an interesting website where I can navigate around all about, in this case, Japanese pharmaceuticals. This is what I want my advertising campaign that I was working on earlier to look like. So my doom scrolling has become research that I'm going to preserve for projects that I'm working on. Again, I tap on that share icon. And if you don't see it, just scroll on that bar. But the brain, if you have the brain installed on your iOS or Android, it will be there. And I tap the brain, sharing to BrainBox, and I return back to the brain. Let's open up BrainBox and see if it's grown a little bit. There, I've got the hey, hey. I've got the Japanese pharmaceuticals. I've got my image. So all that content that I've been sending into BrainBox is now available for me to preserve in the right location in the correct brain when I have time. So it's that simple, sending something to BrainBox. Again, whether you're on the computer or on your mobile device. I'm going to return now. So let's go ahead and minimize my little browser there, or my mirror, and let's reopen the brain. And I can click on the brain box icon. There's all my drop downs. Pharmaceuticals is, and this, they're actually technologies that I'm sort of interested in because it's an interactive web page. And that's something that I've been looking into. I've got another brain over here that's not just about web design, it's about key technologies. This is called my software development and IT management brain. And this brain I'll share with you is a publicly accessible brain. So on the link to the recording that you'll receive, I'll go ahead if anyone out there is interested in IT and development and so forth. You might find this brain incredibly insightful. And it's more than just, here are the different types of development tools and languages that are out there in the world. There's different resources of how to store them, what they're used in or components of, what they work with and are compatible with and aren't. I've got key companies in technologies. I even have insightful people in technologies, technology trailblazers. So you can learn more about, well, here's a fellow named Steve Jobs. Let's see what he's done in the world and what he's linked to and so forth. So some really, really great and helpful information. But what I am mostly interested in right now is, and I'll use my past thought list down here. There, I've got that web design, and I'm sort of collecting all of my inspirations on technologies that are or web pages that are interactive. What tools do they use? What does it look like? How does it work? Can I use that with my other clients and so forth? So when I find something I like, again, remember, I found it while scrolling around on my iPhone, but I sent it to BrainBox. And so I've collected some things. Here's that hey, hey, I spy. So I'm going to click on the little plus sign and it's going to add it as a child thought. The paperclip adds it to the current active thought. And the plus sign, again, adds it as child thought. So I can click, it's going to launch in the brain's built-in browser. I can close this and great way to browse products in a, call it a mini town layout. Kids think it's fun. So I add my own note. I've got a link to the web page. Obviously, I cannot read this, but that doesn't matter. What I want to know about this is it's a fun, interactive web page. It falls under web design inspirations that kids are liking and so forth. So I can revisit this page at any time. I always share on my Brain 101 calls. I never use my browser bookmarks and favorites anymore. I'm going to dig into that, find out the coding that was used. Maybe the entire thing was built in. I don't know. I'm not an engineer myself, but maybe it was C sharp. So I'll connect this to C. Do I have C sharp? I'll type in the word sharp. No, maybe not. So let's say it's built in C++. Plus plus. Let's see if I have that. That's a coding language I know. There it is. So the whole thing remarkably was built in C++. Plus plus. So I can link it to that existing thought, learn more about C++ plus plus and all its subcomponents and so forth. Very, very, a lot of information, as you can see in this area of my brain. This brain was originally created by someone that absolutely knows what they're doing when it comes to engineering and programming. So it's an incredibly smart brain. And since this probably wasn't written in C++, I'm now going to right click and unlink that. But it's still an inspiration for me in web design under key technologies that I'm researching. And then Shelley had the question about sending an image. You capture an image into the brain. And that will take us actually into the QA of the webinar. Again, you saw earlier that that I could capture an image if I find one online. I come into the brain, I leave that window open in the background, and I sort of clip that image by clicking on Insert, Capture, and Insert Image. But also, if I have a file, let's open up a folder really quickly here. If I have a file on my C drive, maybe I'm keeping track of, cool wallpapers. I think I've got some images there. There we go. So I've got a whole bunch of different cool images. There's actually a lot of different ways to bring this content into the brain. You've already seen drag and drop, but I can also copy and paste. So I just right click and I am going to copy this image and open up the brain. There it is. Open up the brain and Control V. So I can just paste that image right into the notes. The drag and drop would have added that file as an attachment. Here, I can incorporate the image into a note. And that's really helpful too, because a lot of times I've seen people creating notes that are instructional. When you get to step 5, be sure to click on the red button. Here's a picture of what the red button looks like, so there's no mistaking it. Images and diagrams and things like that in line with the notes are also often very, very useful.
That's
So
right. I'm
with
glad
that,
you
yeah, if you
covered
wanted me to share any
that.
more images, yeah, let
There
me
were
know.
just questions on images, but a great point in terms of you have options. The image can be a note, or the image can be, we can also do zoomable icons rather than attachment. And maybe show, if you want to show the Snag It tool real quick,
Oh,
for
sure.
zoomable icons. So just to close the loop on image, and then we'll go on to some other data sources that people were asking about.
Absolutely. So I can right click on a thought itself and select capture image. Again, it's going to capture whatever I have in the background of the brain. So if I select capture image, I don't have anything. Well, I've got this open, but maybe I want an array. And this image doesn't exist of all my folders and files and structures and so forth. So I'm capturing image. You can see my little crosshair, and I'll get that whole window. And that is the zoomable icon associated with that particular thought. I use in my own recreational brain, I use a lot of those zoomable images for parts of like mechanical parts of bicycles that I'm rebuilding and things of that nature. So I want to see what, there are bikes out there with oval gears, by the way. So I've got pictures of those and how they work and how they should be aligned with the pedals and so forth. So a lot of times, a picture is worth 1,000 words, quite literally. So it's really great to have that zoomable icon. You don't even have to launch the thought. You don't have to launch the content. You can just hover over to find the image that you're looking for.
Great. So we have a few more questions about different just data sources. Somebody had a question earlier about how to link to third-party drives like Dropbox, Google Drive, a variety of
Sure.
if you have your files stored on one of those
Sure, sure.
online
And
file drives.
yeah, as you saw, I had my Google Drive open. All of these items in my Google Drive have URLs associated with them. In fact, there I've got, my son Spencer, I've got a test folder. I think I can even right click on a test folder, this folder, and copy the link to a folder in Google Drive. So that puts the link to that folder on my clipboard. And then when I come into a brain, additional data from Tim, let's close this attachment and come down here. And just so you can see what the full URL looks like, I'll hit Control Z so it doesn't shorten it to a name. It leaves that full URL. That URL takes me directly to the test folder that I just copied. And the same is true for Dropbox, OneDrive, all those different online data repositories. Everything has a URL. You can copy and paste that into the brain. The very first time you do that and then try to launch, it's going to ask you to log in. I'm already logged in. You can see this test folder is empty, so there's nothing there. But as you can see, my picture in the upper right-hand corner, I'm already logged in. So it's giving me access to this. This built-in browser, just like you were opening that in Google Chrome or Firefox or Safari, it's a cookie. You log in, it remembers who you are the next time you visit it, and the same is true here. So it remembers who I am and takes me directly to that particular location.
Right. Any relative path URL
Mhm.
will work in the brain. I think it's very helpful to think of the brain as a dynamic visual map of all your data sources. So rather than jumping from this application or that one, you can have it all connected. Storing it internally, of course, lets you sync across all your devices on the cloud. But that being said, we don't necessarily require that you store your files all internally in the brain. A lot of people have a hybrid model where you're linking to stuff on the company drive,
Yeah.
Dropbox, whatever system, Google Drives, and it all comes together nicely.
Yeah, and you can always go back and change how that particular file is associated with the thought in your brain. This is an internal attachment. It's an Excel spreadsheet on personal charts for mapping out your health. It's an internal attachment. If I grabbed this off of a shared drive and everyone said, "Hey, where did the charts go? That someone, moved it out of here." Oh, that was me. Sorry. Let's move or copy this file out of the brain, and I can specify where I want this file to reside. So you can always go back and edit and modify. If you move something into the brain or copy it into the brain and later you want to move it, just right click on the attachment to move or copy this file in and or out of the brain.
All right, and we are on the hour, so we have a ton of questions. So we're going to go about 5 to 10 minutes into overtime. For those of you that do have to run, thank you for joining us. You will be getting a recording of this um, particular website. A couple people actually asked for your IT and software development brain map. That is
Yeah,
something
good.
that we can share. So right into support for that. And we're going to continue with a few more questions. Lars has a question. I'm writing a book. Sometimes I want to save a specific version for later access after I have many versions. How do I best manage different versions in the brain? Shelley mentioned something about this at the beginning. I
Yes. Yeah.
did, yes. So let's go and talk about file management since we're talking about bringing all those files together. Yes, you
Sure.
can do different versioning. File management is our wheelhouse. What's also nice about it is you can annotate different versions and make notes on what each version is. So I'll let Matt spend a little bit of time on file management so we can answer that question for Lars.
Sure. So first, I'm just going to attach a Word document to this particular thought. Excuse me. Opened on another monitor. Let me bring it up here. Here is my sample document. Great. So I've saved that. It's saved internally inside the brain. There it is. Now, when I relaunch this file attachment in the future and I add some new changes, now maybe these changes are quite sweeping and extensive, and I think, gosh, my boss might not like this. I better save, I've got the original and now I've got this new version. Before I just click save and overwrite it, I'll do a file save as. And applications these days follow a simple rule. When you're doing a save as, the first place that it wants to save it is where the original was. That's this location right here. So I'm saving it in the original location as supporting data, and this is supporting data version 2. So when you say save as, oops, version 2, there we go. When you say file save as for an internal attachment on a thought in the brain, very easy to have, as Shelley mentioned, incremental versions of individual file attachments. So you have a lot of file management and version control of the content that's going into the brain. And there I can see the timestamps on them and so forth. Now, that's for individual file attachments. For entire brain databases, let's say you go in and make sweeping changes to a brain, and you're going to make even more changes tomorrow, but that might be too far. Let's save the brain in its current state, current date and time, this date, so I can roll back to this version if what I do tomorrow is too aggressive. So what I'm going to do is click on File and simply back up a brain archive. Now you've got two options when you're creating a brain archive, and this is for sharing basically. If only I want to protect this brain, it's not public information yet, so only myself being logged in with my account info can access or extract the BRZ file that I'm about to make. Or, hey, I want Shelly to see how this looks to receive her feedback. So if the changes I make tomorrow are just a mess, she says, no, 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 let's go back to the version from the, June 26th. Then we have that option. So I can select who has access to the BRZ that I'm going to create, where I'm going to save it. I'll back it up, and I've backed up that BRZ. So now I can go forward with these crazy ideas that I have, and if they don't work out, I can roll back to the version because I've archived the entire brain. And when you archive and create a BRZ, you're saving all the thoughts, the notes, the file attachments, thought types and tags, features we haven't even talked about today. Those are all incorporated in that BRZ. So if I roll back to that BRZ, I'll have everything that I need. Now, let's say I want both. This is where it gets a little bit tricky. Each brain, not tricky, but if you know the rules of the brain, it all makes sense. Each brain has an ID. Um, and that's to protect you, the brain creator, so that when I sync a brain to the cloud, no one else has access to that ID. Or if I give very specific people access or the whole world access, the brain application knows through an ID. Even if the brain name changes, the content changes, the ID always remains the same. So the brain knows how to keep it secure to the right audience. So if I want both versions, this crazy version that I just created and the backup that I did earlier, what I would do is create a new brain. So create brain. I'm going to call this my Scout backup and say OK. Excuse me. So it randomly selects a different theme or wallpaper that I have. I'll go with dark blue and say File, Import. And I want to import into this brain that I have open a BRZ file. So I'll click on Select. And I didn't make a note of where I was backing up my brain. So I'll just grab another one. I'll call it My Thinking Space and open. And it's going to review that. Yes, it's a brain that can be imported. And I'll click to back up and import into this brain my thinking space. So I didn't make a mental note. I can go search for my Scout brain that I backed up. This is another brain that I imported into this one. So if I were just to import it as a standalone brain, I'd get a message that says, hey, this brain already exists. You can't have two copies of the same ID. So that's why it all makes sense. You just create a backup brain and import into that brain. And now they're labeled accordingly. So I know moving forward which one to edit as well. So it actually becomes very helpful to create a new brain from scratch, name it accordingly, and then import data into that brain. So that's how you create a backup of an existing brain.
All right. And just getting back to files and attachments, if you could just
Hmm.
go back to the thought on supporting data, there was another question Patrick had asked. How do you actually tell if you have any attachments on the thought? And I think this thought shows it very well. So you can see this, the active thought in the center. You've got the number two over by the Word documents. You can actually see that there are two Word documents attached. Now, if you have icons on your thoughts, you will not see that. But that being said, you can look over to the side of the notes, and you can look and see your attachments right at the top of your thought name in the note
Yeah.
as well.
Yeah.
And
So,
there was a question also about displaying these attachments. So right now, Matt's got it set so you've got your files on the top, the note below. But if you want to click on maybe adding soluble fiber, especially this is relevant for PDFs, you can actually change the setting of your notes so that your files can auto load in that browser, which is really nice. So if we want to talk about how we can customize that for viewing files, viewing web pages,
absolutely.
a little bit
So,
about file viewing in the Notes browser.
yeah, and there are, Shelley hit the nail right on the head. There are options. There are a lot of options so that the brain can work for your environment. Not everyone wants to launch. Maybe this is a huge PDF with hundreds of pages. I don't need to launch it. I just need to get in and start creating some notes for this attachment. Or I don't have any notes, but I also don't want the PDF to launch. I just need it there for when I need it. All of those different options, whatever works best for you, and most of them are done by going up to Options and Preferences. If you're on a Mac, you would click on the Brain Preferences. And there are a lot of features that you can start playing around with. Do you want event indicators or note indicators? The little icon that tells you whether or not there's a note attached to a thought. In the notes editor, I can click and decide if I want to display my mapped links and backlinks or not. If I want my backlinks that are being underlined to show all of them, never show them all except for common words. So many different options for you to play around with here. But the one specifically that Shelley is mentioning is that going to launch automatically? Do the PDF previews show when I'm searching? So I hover over, I can see a preview. This is the one in particular, show content previews when searching. Oh, no, that's not it. Um,
Also in the
uh,
Notes area, you can also just click just to view the attachments right in there
Yes,
as well.
absolutely. Yeah. So you can specify exactly whether you want the thought to, if there's no note, if you want it to automatically show up or not. And just play around with these settings to get the environment that works best for you. How you want all of the content to work in the future.
Fantastic. And finally, there have been a lot of questions about bookmarks, getting them in and out of browsers. And then James mentions that he's going to get them all out and use the Brain Box, sort of like you've done. What is the best approach for an all-out import of your bookmarks into the Brain?
Sure. Well, you can play around with, if you click on File and go down to Import, you can see some of the different options that we have. And we do not have an import. We used to, but the problem with importing, and that was back with Internet Explorer when Internet Explorer was all the rage. You could import your Internet Explorer bookmarks and favorites. What happens is they change their algorithms, how they store their data, and suddenly the brain doesn't know how to import this new format, and it makes it look like the brain suddenly broke. Nothing broke in the brain. It's just that this other app, Microsoft, decided we're going to change how we're storing our data. So, and all the browsers were doing this and constantly changing and upgrading and so forth. And so there's to keep it safe and make the import functionality work without issue. We simply can't rely that they're never going to change their format again. So you can't import directly a folder or a browser bookmarks and favorites for Firefox or Safari. Now, if you can export that into a properly formatted document or structure, then you can import it. So if you can export it to a file and folder directory, you should be able to import that fine into the brain. I've talked to some people that have exported it to an outline, basically. And an outline is interesting. Anything that starts with a dash, it's added as a note. So you can add additional notes. You can actually go in and tweak and adjust how the file looks before you import it to get that data into the brain. And to show you what I mean really quickly, I'll open up, I think on my C drive, I've got some different types of text files. So here's a text file on Edgar Allan Poe. But as you can see right here at the top, if I were to import this, I would have a note. I would also have a web page. So I get the topic, the web page, a note, and then child thoughts down below. So again, whatever app you have, whether it's browser bookmarks and favorites or another storage app online, if you can get it into a properly formatted document, so there's no right or wrong, best format. It's whatever is working best for you. And this is just one of the many different options that you have. You can then import into the brain very quickly and easily. So that content, for example, I should go into a sample brain, but I'll just say file. Let's go to learning about, and I'll create a thought for Edgar Allan Poe. And I'm going to say file, import, and you can see how quickly this happens. A text, I'll select the file, and that's on my brain directory, desktop 2, maps, po.txt, open. And it's reading the data to make sure it's compatible. And I don't want to create a new brain. I want to add this to my existing brain and the thought that I'm on. So there's those radio options again. I'll go ahead and import that. And yes, I do want to import it. There it is. It created a thought, Edgar Allan Poe. It has a web link attached to it. The web link is the web link I had for Edgar Allan Poe, Brainy
Nice.
Quotes. Yeah, I've got my note there. I even had a pipe symbol, and the pipe symbol will add a label to a thought, which is when I hover over it, favorite author. That shows up when I hover over. And all of this structure of the content that was down below, popular in culture, his legacy, and so forth, all those subcategories, all imported into the brain. So very, very quickly, I've created a very helpful structure that came from existing data that I already had.
All right, and I think we covered a lot. I think with that, we are going to end today's session. But before we do, Matt, any other final words of wisdom on file measure? Oh, there is one more question I
Sure.
should answer really quick. We don't have time to get into the scope of AI on this webinar, but do join us for the Brain 101, where you can build a whole all your thoughts through AI as well. We just covered a little bit of AI in the notes section for summarization, but it can generate full-on new notes, as you saw a little bit. We can generate thoughts, and the AI is included in the Brain Pro. That was a question that popped up earlier. So yes, it is a licensed version of Chat GPT that we utilize for your AI. But yes, you don't have to get a separate AI system. You can use the Brains if you have a Brain Pro license. So that was the only other question worth clarifying. Matt, I don't know if you had any other thoughts before we close today's
Yeah,
session.
just that
Very
we
informative.
have a 101 tomorrow. So if
Perfect.
you're new to the
Yes.
brain and this was your introduction and you want to slow things down and say, all right, just show
Mhm.
me the basics, join me tomorrow, the Brain 101. And also, those class sizes are a little bit smaller. If there's questions that we didn't get to you, we'll follow up with you via email, or you can join a Brain 101 and we'll go through your questions one by one to make sure all questions get answered on those webinars.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today and wish you well in bringing it all together, smart notes and connected knowledge on the go. Hope to see you again on future Brain Technologies events. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.